Okay. Hey, Mike Leario, your host for the Objective Arete podcast, and this is episode 1 of the bonus series. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Greg Walker, owner of Hatchet Brewery, formerly of the United States Army, and also Chuck Ritter, currently with the United States Army, warrior, philosopher, and soon to be retired, both of whom are the founders of Objective Arete. So, gentlemen, welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me in my own Irish pub.
Yes, right. We're here in the Falcon Snail Pub, which is a really great recreation of something that you might find in, I don't know, Dublin, Cork. What part of Ireland are we in, Chuck? What was the inspiration for this?
It's kind of a mash. It's weird too because I didn't realize that there was so much animosity between Scottish and Irish and English until I went to Scotland and I was talking about how it was cool to visit England for the first time, and it was like the music stopped and this is for real stopped, and they sat down and they gave us a whole lecture and a history on Scotland. It was really cool, but
it's not England.
It's like, what are you? Yeah, right. It was wild. But so yeah, it's kind of just a mix, right? I got British stuff over here. I got Irish stuff over there.
Is that your heritage?
Irish. Yeah. So my middle name is Patrick. That's why I'm so pale. Yeah.
Greg, you look like you have some Nordic blood in your background.
I'm mostly German, but my name is Scottish. Ironically.
Cool. Well, I'm Italian, pretty much. Yeah. Although on my mom's side, there's some Scots.
Leario.
But I don't know.
Make me a nice pizza pie.
Hey. So we're here in this Falcon Snail Pub, and today, this first episode of the bonus series, we're going to talk about fitness and training. Chuck, you've had 34 surgeries.
Yeah. Recently had my 34th surgery. 3 weeks ago, had a bilateral hernia operation where they're going in to fix one, but they ended up finding 4, 2 on each side. So they fixed that. And about 14 or 15 weeks out from having a new left hip, the year before that, I got a new right hip and then back fusions and, it's lots of fun.
Did you ever go under the knife for anything like an appendectomy or anything before you guys started getting blown up and shot for a living?
I had some so I got weak genes. I say that jokingly, but it's for real. I have weak genes.
That's where the hernia came from. You weren't supporting
my
the joke.
testosterone levels are always chronically low, but I had 2 hernias when I was younger. I had a lot of ear problems I had to do surgery on when I was younger, blown eardrum before I joined the military. So there's a few things.
Okay.
Right?
But the vast majority of the surgeries you've had are a result of the lifestyle. Let's call it a lifestyle choice.
The 34 are all related to combat or the job somehow.
Got it.
Right.
And so with each one of those surgeries, I mean, that's a setback in a way, right? I mean, you're fixing yourself, but in terms of your fitness and conditioning, every surgery requires recovery time, right?
Yeah.
And got to take care. So talk us through that. What is that like, and how have you approached the cycle of wellness to injury to surgery, recovery, wellness again? What's that like?
So you're always having to start over from scratch. Like right now, I just had to start over from scratch again. I thought I was at a certain point after this last hip surgery, had the hernia surgery. Got to be careful. So it's a slow progression up. I've had to really know how to walk, at least 3 times now. But one of the themes that I keep seeing, especially online, that's kind of concerning is I'll talk about my goals, which are maybe a little outlandish. And, I plan on running a 50-mile race in November, and then I'm going to take every services physical fitness test in December with a good friend of mine.
And real quick, this is March right now. We're talking about almost.
So it's right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's a goal I have, and people are like, well, why are you beating yourself up? Or you're a fitness weirdo. You're like, you don't have to beat your body up anymore. It's no. Investing in yourself physically in a smart, intelligent way is not beating your body up. That's a smart investment as long as you're doing it intelligently. I'm not waking up at 4:30 like, oh, I'm just gonna go run 100 miles. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing a very intentional, planned out, progressive program that leads to a desired end state and has checks and balances in it. And it's based off. I got this stack of books here in front of me because I do want to go over that in a minute. But I'm basing the programming off of advice and input that I've had from, being able to have access to professionals. That's just been an amazing thing. And also, my own research and then what I've tried. And, people are like, oh, you just keep hurting yourself over again. Like, no. I've never actually had a surgery due to me hurting myself in training. In fact, the only times I've ever hurt myself in training were before I had access to professionals, which was, around the 2010 timeframe. I did do some stupid things like that. Like I had a bone graft in my face where they were fixing my jaw, and the day after a major bone graft where everything was sewn up because they cultivated bone front here, I decided I was going to go to 12-mile ruck march with my friend. I called my buddy Rich Cullen. I was like, hey, let's go do a 12-mile ruck. He's like, are you sure that's smart?
Yeah, I don't need my mouth to go on a ruck
Whatever.
march.
Yeah, and that was I was really dumb, and I really messed myself up, and some of the stuff came a little, it loosened up in there from me being an idiot.
Yeah.
But once we had the systems in place, luckily in my job, we had, trainers, we had sports psychs, we had therapists, we had dietitians. And once I started actually listening to them, because we all raged against the machine at first, like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to go out there and run every day and do dumb stuff. I was able to start really building plans that worked. Like when I got shot in 2013, I got shot 3 times. I bled on the operating table. I had to relearn how to use this arm. I was able to redeploy in 2 months because I sat down with the experts. We built a plan, everything from nutrition to physical therapy to how I was training my mind, my balance, stability, and I was able to redeploy in 2.5 months. And within 3 months, I was back to deadlifting above 500 pounds, running, 40-minute 5-mile. So it's possible as long as you have goals and you do smart, intelligent training towards those goals.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's a great place to insert this idea of measures of performance versus measures of effectiveness, right? Like they're different and you need both probably, especially for something like this, like, how much am I lifting and what's the result of that? Right. So, very cool.
Like, right. I'm a large guy, so I know that my power to weight ratio needs to be much more refined now. So I need to drop about 25 pounds if I'm going to run 50 miles. I don't have to probably ever deadlift that max, like 500 pounds again. It's just not needed. If I'm going to max the Army's combat physical fitness test, I think I need to do 345 3 times, which I think is very doable. I don't think it's going to add a whole lot of mass to my body, and that's fine. For my goals, I don't need to be this big, strong person. I used to pride myself on being able to run a sub 40-minute 5-mile and lift a ton of weight. I don't need to do that anymore. My body won't handle it. I'll be injured if I do that.
Yeah,
it's dumb. So with my goals in mind, and we'll go through some of this stuff later because I think people should invest. If you don't invest in any other books in fitness, I think these 3 books are what people should buy no matter what you're doing. We'll go over that in a minute.
Cool. How about you, Greg? What are you working on? You're looking good.
Oh, I appreciate it. I've gone back to kind of what I used to do even in high school, with just kind of standard bodybuilding, old school lifts. It's a constant cycle for me where it's a question of priorities. And so usually when I find like it's a trigger, I'm like, hey, I haven't been working out in a while. It means that I need to reassess my priorities and get back into it. Because for me, honestly, a lot of the physical fitness stuff goes way beyond physical. It's a lot of mental clarity, emotional regulation, just being able to perform better in general. So like that's something I've learned over time that I kind of took for granted, I would say.
Yeah.
But I'm also not trying to bench 315 anymore. Like I like doing 5x5s. I like, again, the kind of old school stuff.
5x5s.
So it's a progression of it's more strength training. So 5 sets of 5 at a failure weight, whatever that is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can calculate that based off 1 rep max, that type of thing.
Yeah.
That tends to be what I go to. And then I build progressions around that. And then I try to do 4-ish, 5 times a week, but make it a 30 to hour long session. So nothing crazy. Like we used to do the 2-hour workouts, that type of thing. And it's just more sustainable. It's something I can fit into my calendar that still gives me the same benefits without having to go to like the extreme per se.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that, setting expectations along with goals is kind of a key thing. When I'm traveling, and I do a fair amount of travel with work, I will adjust my expectations. Like I like working out every day, but I know that when I'm working with clients and I'm traveling, that probably isn't going to happen. So I'll take, if I'm going away on a 5-day trip, right? What's, half of that, 2.5 or whatever that is, half plus 1 day. So if I work out 3 times in a 5-day work trip, I'm happy. Right. So I think setting expectations is a key aspect of that, especially when you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Would I like to work out every day? Absolutely. But sometimes I can't. Then the other thing is I was introduced to this concept of NEAT a few years ago. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Which is just a fancy way of saying burning calories. And, the idea is if you slept 8 hours a day, and that's a big if for a lot of us, and you were in the gym for 1 hour, you'd still have 66% of the day where you could burn calories. So if you were to park your car as far away from the entrance to the building and walk in instead of as close as you could, if you took the stairs instead of the elevator, those kinds of things, they're choices you can make that will help you get your steps in, if nothing else. And so I've become a big fan of NEAT as I get older too, just for reminding myself to make better choices about what I'm doing. The other thing I would say real quick that I think that you've touched on, both of you, is this idea of balance, in that it's more than just exercising, right? The Army came out with the fitness triad, or the performance triad. What do they call it? Performance triad. Performance triad after I came off active duty. I was like, oh, damn, I've been screaming about this for years, right? That it's a 3-legged stool of sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And you got to do all 3 of them in appropriate measure. Most guys are failing not because they're not exercising or not eating right, but they're doing those 2 things, but they're not getting enough sleep. Or they're getting enough sleep and they're eating well, but they're not exercising, right? And so it's usually when people are screwing up, it's because they've let one of those fall out of whack, one or more, obviously. And so if you can keep those 3 things in balance, in balance, right? I think that's a great way to approach it as well. Cool. All right, Chuck, talk to us about these books, man. What do you got here?
So I got 4 books, but you can't buy one of them. So the one on top, though, I'm wearing my Atomic Athlete shirt.
Represent.
I'm a big believer in Atomic Athlete. Jake Signs, the owner, or one of the owners. He's on our board of advisors for Objective Arete.
Also a great podcast episode.
Yeah, which be coming out soon.
Tune in.
But the reason I like Atomic is, one of their one of the things they pride themselves on is that they have very low injury rates in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, yeah, our when you look at how our people are progressing, it's probably a little less aggressive than you went to military athlete or some of these other ones, but it's more sustainable in the long run. And they really take time to educate people on what they're doing. Like, hey, if we're doing this programming for the next 8 weeks in this cycle, this is what we're going for. We're really working on strength endurance, and we're working on aerobic capacity. And then we're going to cycle off that, and we're going to do a hypertrophy program. That always messes me up.
I don't know why. It's such a simple word to say.
It's not hypertrophy. Hypertrophy would be like a trophy that's pretty hyper. Hypertrophy, building muscle, and then going, hey, we're going to go into this strength cycle, right? But what they did here is they built us a program called Special Operations Physical Fitness Instructor course back in the day for the NCO Academy, and it was all geared towards teaching the cadre really in depth how the body works, so you can train around anything. You can, you got goals to do a powerlifting competition in a year. You can actually train for that. And, parts of the program where the cadre had to take a fictional person that say with a powerlifter and they wanted to run a marathon in a year. Then they had to go through and explain how they were going to get in there, but really talk about how the programming was going to, specifically help the body adapt in what ways. Volume and intensity. They're inversely related. You open one, down the other, and then your body only really cares about, time under tension, time under stress. Like what's the stimulus you're giving it, and how much time are you putting your body into that to get the adaptation you want, whether it's you want more efficient mitochondria, more powerful mitochondria, and using ATP better to really build your, aerobic base so you can have a higher anaerobic ceiling as they describe it. But so I go through there because they break it down into different, and then 12 different really, bins of how you can train different parts of your body. And again, they don't cleanse the best model. I think modeling is important. Like we got to model things so we can understand them. And maybe there might be better models, or might be not. But
what's the quotation? All models are wrong. Some models are useful.
Some models are useful, right? So it's a model, and I like their model. I obviously use other models too. I use our trainers and whatnot, but they just use basic science, and actually what they use is based off these books here, which we'll go over real quick.
But real quick too, so people can't get this because this was a special program, but they can go to.
They can get with these. Everything that's in that you can find in these 3 books right here.
But they can also go to the Atomic Athlete website, and don't they have tailor-made programs that people can plug into?
They do, yeah. You go to Atomic Athlete, their programs are amazing. I think it's very affordable. Actually, you know what? There is 4 books. I don't have the other one down here. There's a really thick book upstairs called The Lore of Running. And even if you're not a runner, that book goes from A to Z and how the body works and how to train appropriately. Kind of like this one. Like this is one that if you look in the Atomic Athlete, you wouldn't think this is a good book for anybody. It's a Training for the New Alpinism, a manual for climbers athlete. Mark Twight, it says the foreword. Actually, Mark Twight's in here a lot. Mark Twight started Jim Jones, but this book again has everything you need to know how the body works. They really go into really how to increase your, they really go into like lactate threshold, VO2 max, how to increase your body's ability to have strength endurance versus just strength, how have your body's ability to have, a better aerobic, better aerobic capacity, better work capacity. So your body is better able to process lactate and not get, worn out. And over time too, like, chronic work capacity where yes, you can do something hard today and wake up and do something hard tomorrow. How to build your training programs intelligently. Like it's all in just like it doesn't matter if you're a power lifter or you're a marathon runner. I think everybody should pick up Training for the New Alpinism and read it because it is truly an amazing book.
Well, I mean, because it's out there on the extreme, right? I mean, if you're at altitude, an alpine altitude, I mean, that's what that does to the body. I just think about the 14 Peaks documentary with Mims, the Tibetan
that's a
former
show.
Like, what that guy was able to do and his capacities, well, because he was training for this kind of a extreme altitude. That's cool.
Even if you're not doing anything extreme, like the basics are the same thing. This and all these books cover, when you read them, you're like, oh, that's the same thing this says. There's a different way. Power, speed, and endurance, skill-based approach to endurance training. So if you're looking to do some, even like, endurance training when it comes to like weightlifting and stuff like that, this is also a great book that we base, this one's got everything from mobility to stability to actually building a training program. And then the last one, which is always super important, is Supple Leopard. One of the things I wish I would have started putting in my programming when I was younger was
to be more supple.
To be more supple was more mobility. Like this one, really, it goes over like just really common sense exercises that you can put any routine that you're building your program, so you also stay mobile in those areas and you're not just breaking your body down. And a lot of the things that our trainers, that's when you start reading, it's like, oh man, all my trainers at work really, I hated some of the stuff. This is stupid. Like, cause you do something like it would seem simple and you just couldn't do it. Right. Like stupid glute ham raises. And you're like, okay, now I see, like, I would come back to my trainers. Like, I see why they're making me do that. And the reality why I sucked at it is I shouldn't have been sucking at it. Cause that was an imbalance.
Yeah.
And now later in life, I really put all those kind of like really weird exercises into my programming. So, I stay up on it and I'm always left the bang generally. And yeah, I don't regret, in life, but I do wish if I could go back.
Yeah.
Add some mobility in there.
Sure. My wife has been doing yoga for years and I was always like, yeah, whatever, yoga. Man, a couple of years ago, I took it up. I've got this great app called Asana Rebel and it's right there on my phone. And, man, I don't do it enough, but I do it now on a regular basis. And I find that, at 64 years old, that mobility is such a key piece of.
You kind of look like a yogi.
Do I?
Yeah, you kind of you get the physique for it. I would take a yoga class from Mike Leario.
Would you?
It's Italian yoga.
Okay, but only if you're gonna
yoga and a pizza.
I'm not gonna let you be behind me though when we're doing the stretching exercises. Hey, I do got to say though, and this is one of the coolest things I remember ever doing with you was in 2023 when we went to the Philadelphia Phillies training facility there in Florida, and the baseball players were cool, but the coolest thing for me was watching you interact with the strength and conditioning and the physical therapy people and seeing the reaction on their face as you're talking to them about your programs that you've done for your recoveries from being wounded, from being blown up, from being shot, from having all these surgeries. And they were just in awe. They were sponges. They couldn't get enough of what you were talking about because if this were a religion, you're certainly a disciple, an apostle, if not, the Messiah when it comes to this.
Because it works. And I think they were so fascinated because it's everything that they preach. And now they've got something or someone in front of them like, well, he did everything that we preach and it actually works. Right. Because they see, the lower end of it with people like, no, here's somebody that's actually recovered from very traumatic things, not because he's some type of superhuman, but because he just actually applied what's been proven to work, right?
Yeah. You were intentional and you were discovering and you invested in your outcomes, which I think is all of us could say, oh yeah, that's what we ought to do. But very few of us put the energy into doing that.
You got to invest in yourself. Like we talk about all the time, selfishness, like be selfish, invest in yourself. And that selfish investment of batching out time during the day to do some kind of physical training, maybe maybe you're missing limbs or you really can't walk, or something, any type of motion. Like people like, oh, moving like that hurts. Like, okay, well, if you go to a physical therapist or anybody that helps fix problems, they're not going to give you like some magical healing power. They're going to do some manipulation, but then they're going to give you a bunch of exercises to do that are going to suck. And it's going to hurt because you're moving through these ranges of motion, breaking up scar tissue, strengthening imbalances, and making sure that you can move without pain. Sometimes like when you're doing like nerve glides, you're stretching out your nerves because there's some problem there that you have to fix. And the only way to do that is through movement and manipulation of your body. And you have to do most of the work. Like physical therapists, like they're doing like maybe 5%, maybe. And then really they're doing an evaluation. They're helping, get something, but then it's on you to do the rest of it. And you have to dedicate that time. Nothing's going to happen overnight. You can't rush that type of stuff. It just doesn't work. It's not like they're magic. And I think that's just like, to go do something, get up.
Yeah.
Even if it's like after my back fusion, right? Like, okay, today the goal is I'm going to walk 5 minutes 3 times a day. Okay, not 10 minutes. Now, okay, 3 times a day I'm walking 30 minutes at a clip.
Yeah.
Right? Like right now, last week, I'm just upping my mileage. Like it was like a 1.5 mile run, a 2 mile run. So this next week, Monday is a 2 mile run, Wednesday's a 2 mile run, and then Friday's a 3 mile run, and then Saturday's a 5 mile walk. And in between that, it's spin bike sessions, and I'm just going up in volume, going up in 10 minutes at a time. Even though I can do way more than that, I feel. Just because you can do more doesn't mean you should do more.
Right.
And yes, before the hernia surgery, I was way above that, but I got to make sure I don't re-injure this, and I got to make sure, and while I'm doing that in the afternoons, I'm doing other workouts, and a lot of those workouts right now, I'm in what I call phase 1. I call it I think I called it something off Terminator, like building the metal endoskeleton or something. I forgot what I named it on the programming, but it's 6 weeks dedicated to like, I'm not even doing full pull-ups. I'm coming up into like a halfway or up, and I'm holding, for a number of time, and I'll slowly go down, and each time I progress, I'll hold it for another 5 seconds. So right now it's like 20-second holds for 5 rounds, and then hanging at the bottom for a good 30 seconds, right? It's really making sure I'm stretched, making sure all my tendons and ligaments, because I've had this arm rebuilt. I've had to relocate my bicep tendon. I got to be careful. Like a lot of weird, like really slow lunging movements, a lot of really weird, like really slow kettlebell squats and whatnot. Just making sure that, I could do more than that. I'm just deadlifting 65 pounds, right? Like for reps, just making sure my body and everything is good, doing a lot of core stability work, and it sucks. Like, man, this feels like I'm doing nothing, right? But I am, because right now I'm sore from doing something that felt like nothing. But there's places where I'm like, I needed that. And in fact, next week, I'm just going to add just a little bit to that. I'm going to add a little bit more range of emotion there. And then at the end of the 6 weeks,
sorry, did you say range of motion or range of emotions? Because
both actually. When you're in there, it's kind of emotion. You're like, man, I should be able to do way more than this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can physically do more. But I'm not, like, yesterday I got kind of stupid. I'm like, you know what? The leg tucks, the knee tucks, where you bring your knees up to the elbow. It's the Army's head for physical fitness. Is like, man, I'm 3 weeks out from the surgery, and I haven't practiced these probably a year. And I got a video of it. I knocked out like 8 of them, like with no problem. Like, how do people not do these? But then I was like, you know what? That was probably dumb, and I'm probably gonna feel that in the surgical area tomorrow. And I did. I woke up this morning. I was like, yeah, I can. That was probably pretty stupid, right? So I do keep a note. In my notebook. I don't have my notebook down here. When I open it up for my training, it says, "Don't be a dumbass today."
Yeah.
And I make sure I read that every morning, because I need to put it in the gym too.
That's good. That's like Notre Dame's play like a champion today.
Right,
don't be a dumbass today.
I probably just need to put a big screen TV in there, and that's all it says. It just flashes it has like a motion sensors. Like, that's all it says.
Don't be a dumbass today.
Don't be a dumbass today.
The mind remembers, the body forgets. Another, I think, appropriate quotation. So, okay. Greg, you working on a 50-kilometer race too, or are you just getting 50 barrels of beer into the truck within less than, a certain number of minutes? Or?
My goal now is I'm getting back into jiu-jitsu. I found like playing soccer, like I always used to enjoy running. What I liked about running is having an activity to do, like having a goal associated with it. And so, a lot of the mobility stuff, jiu-jitsu really helps me with that. I love the community aspect of it. And so that's my short-term goal, is to compete in I'm still a white belt, but compete in a local competition for that probably by this fall. So that's been my goal, so to speak, outside of just the standard programming.
For those of us who don't know, like the white belt's not the very lowest, right?
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So what in your progression on the way to black is what? Yellow, red, or is there
it's a white, blue,
It takes a while though for
Purple,
jiu-jitsu
brown, black. Yeah, it takes about 2 years, I think, to get to blue, roughly.
Wow.
So I've been doing it for about a year and a half right now.
Just getting your ego checked every time you go.
Every day. Well, that's part of what I love about it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a great community too, because you can get hurt, but everybody's very respectful and thoughtful. That's perhaps the most
Gi, no
beneficial.
gi? Where you guys?
I do mostly gi. I like the no gi. The no gi feels more like applicable.
Yeah.
It's a different feel.
Because unless
It
you're
feels-
walking down the street wearing your gi,
No,
probably.
maybe a parka and jeans, but yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen, especially in North Carolina.
Yeah.
You always keep it in your truck. Like, hold on, give me a second.
And then they run when they see the gi come out
Yeah.
with that white belt,
With that white
especially.
belt, yeah. I don't know if that'll have the intended impact, but yeah.
Oh man. Cool.
What about you, Mike? What are you training for? Like, we haven't talked about your physical fitness programming as you. So now you're not exactly the youngest man anymore. You've been through a lot of life,
No, you're right.
and you went through what was it, 89? You graduated at West Point.
83.
Okay, wow.
79 I went in, 83 I came out.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. What am I working towards? Man, a lower handicap in my golf game. I only walk when I golf, unless I'm forced to ride in a cart because it's a tournament or something. I always walk. So for me, that's okay. So golf there's a mental aspect to it, keep me sharp, not overthinking, but staying in the moment, staying in the shot. Obviously, there's mobility to it. If you're not stretching ahead of time and afterwards, the golf swing can really wear you out. I mean, your back. There's some issues there if you're not careful.
So there's actually golf injuries.
Yeah. I can show you. I've got a picture. I split my lip open because I was trying to chip a ball up onto the green on the other side of a cart path, and it went right into the edge of the cart path and came back and hit me right in the mouth. So stupid shit can happen too. Yeah. And you can get hurt. No, my general wellness and well-being comes from staying fit, I think. I mean, when we met in 2013, I was about in as good a shape at 52 years old as I ever was. I mean, I think I was in pretty good shape in my 30s and 40s, but I was kind of crushing it at 52 there in Afghanistan, and the facility we had at Camp Moorhead, and the fact that I could actually go running up a mountain. And I'd get up really early to do work, and then I could take like an hour or even almost 2 hours and just before lunch to work out, and that was great. But I like what our friend Pat McNamara says about the reasons why you work out. There's only 4 reasons why you work out. It's wellness and longevity, number 1. Number 2, to save your ass if you have to get out of a burning building or a burning vehicle. Number 3, save somebody else's ass who's in a burning building or a crashed vehicle. And then number 4, kick somebody's ass. And I love when he says, hey, do I like it if I walk past my wife naked? And she goes, damn. He goes, well, yeah, of course I do, but that's a bonus. That's not a reason to work out. And so Pat, thank you. Appreciate that. Not that I've ever walked past him naked.
Yet.
Rebecca, haven't done that yet. No, I think it's great just to stay fit because you're not getting any younger. None of us is going to get any younger. If you're familiar with Peter Attia and the stuff he does, he basically says you've got to reverse engineer. Like, what are your expectations when you're 80? Or, and what do you want to be able to do? Pick up a grandkid, walk up a flight of stairs? What's that going to take? What kind of strength does that require? What kind of aerobic capacity does that require? Recognize that you're going to lose about 10% every decade. If you can't do that shit right now, there's no way you're going to do it in 20, 30 years. So figure out what you need to do there and have at least, well, in my case, 20, 30 years. I got to build up 20 or 30% above that if that's the objective I have when I get that old.
Yeah.
So
it's those little experiences, I think, that really drive that home. Like my dad ended up in a motorcycle accident right around the time my sister was trying to get married. And so he ended up in a wheelchair.
Wow.
And so, and he was really light at the time, but being able to carry him into the wedding so that he could be in the wedding was very rewarding for me. So it's funny how things progress over time. It's not about benching 315 or looking jacked. It's about just being functional, I think.
Oh, I was just going to, as you were saying that's the word that came to my mind was functional, right? Yeah. And that's why one of my favorite books is Christopher McDougall's Natural Born Heroes. Because it's a history book, but it's also a book about what does it mean to be truly fit, to be functionally fit. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. He looks at these British dirty tricks guys that kidnapped a German general off of Crete and got him to a submarine into Egypt during World War II. And it's like, how did they get him from this side of the island to that side of the island to the submarine? What were they eating? What kind of movements did that require? What kind of capacities did that require? Because I've never been to Crete, but apparently it's a pretty rough terrain, rough environment. Great book, but he puts it exactly into, so, he spends time with an ex-ballerina picking weeds out of Prospect Park in Brooklyn to make a super salad. He goes to Brazil to learn these different functional fitness routines, and that were developed by guys who had been on a ship when some island in the Caribbean had a volcano that blew up, and all these people died because they couldn't swim out to a boat that was just offshore. And so I think that, to me, is, what am I working towards? I'm working to be as healthy as I can be, as functionally fit as I can be, to do all the stuff I think I need to do to save my ass or somebody else's ass. I'm not really looking to kick anybody's asses these days, but anyway, that's just.
So when you said super salad, like a super salad or a soup or salad?
Super salad. See, now you do. Okay, yeah, got to be careful in enunciating.
But let me ask you this: Do you eat soup, or do you drink soup?
Depends. I mean, if it's a chunky soup, I mean,
Like
you
a
got
French onion maybe with a bunch of cheese.
Yeah,
in
with
it?
the bread in there and the cheese, or if it's a minestrone with a lot of good stuff in there. Why are we talking about soup?
I don't know, because you get super salad, right?
Soup is good food. I think that's a tagline for somebody.
You're Italian. You like the soup.
Yeah, Italian wedding soup. Love that. My mom used to make a mean Italian wedding soup.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. What else we got? So we've talked about our goals and objectives and programs. Anything else about fitness we need to tell our listening audience?
One of the things that I really took away from Atomic Athlete that I think that everybody should put into their entire lives, right, is in the military, we have these things called RATs that we try to, like, you see, especially in special forces, you see teams doing these, what we call RATs, which is random acts of training. So something really cool, really sexy. I'm sure it's a lot of fun. But does it actually lead to your desired end state of what you're trying to validate on or certify on, right?
Yeah.
And people do random acts of life, right? They don't sit there and plan stuff out. Atomic Athlete calls what their philosophy the 4 Ps. They say, hey, man, whatever you do, follow the 4 Ps, whether it's your life, finances, whatever your goals are, the 4 Ps, which is have a plan, right? Before you get to the plan, have a purpose, right? Have goals. Like, what am I doing and why am I doing it, right? Kind of gets back to what you were talking about, making sure, like, you're not, yes, you're doing the right thing, but then are you doing that thing correctly, right? Like, yes, I'm running a marathon in November, and I can do PT every day, lifting a lot of heavy weights, right? So I'm doing the right thing. I'm physically training every day for hours, but I'm doing it wrong. So when I go run the 50 mile, it's not gonna make sense, right? And you can do that if you're not careful. If you're not following the 4 Ps, have a purpose, know what you're going for, and clearly define that in your head so you can visualize it, and then have a plan, right? Like, okay, well, how am I going to get here? And within that plan, you want to use periodization, which means blocks. So, like, for me, the periodization is, hey, this first 6 weeks, I'm not really doing a whole lot of, like, super heavy. I'm just doing, like, body weight movements, really functional, making sure everything can move properly, making sure all my ligaments and tendons are where they need to be. So when I move into the next phase, I'm much less likely to get hurt as I'm ramping up the mileage and running, as I'm ramping up, my weight and everything that I'm doing with, pull-ups. I'm not probably not going to bench press for a while, more really aggressive push-ups and other things. And then, so it's blocked out. So you're switching out. Okay, this is a stability, whatever phase, a base phase. Now I'm going to move into more of like a base building foundational phase. And then I'll move into like hypertrophy phase to where I'm building a little bit of muscle, right? And then I'll move into whatever, strength endurance phase, whatever. Phase it out using periodization. So it's not getting stale, and my body is like, your body does react to stimulus, and it'll start plateauing out. That way I don't plateau out. And then you want whatever you're doing to be progressive, but feasibly progressive. So you're coming up here, right? And then maybe you're taking a little bit of downturn in some of those areas as you periodize into this next section, but then you're coming back up here to where, it's kind of like this really almost like an undulating curve to where, yeah, it's slower, but it ensures longevity, and it mitigates or minimizes risk. Right? We always talk about, like, that you do have to have acceptable risk to win.
Yeah,
so I'm taking acceptable risk by pushing myself, but I'm also minimizing the stupidity factor. Right? That's what I got to say too. Like, I got to write and, like, don't be a dumbass today. So I think that the 4 Ps are pretty brilliant.
That's
that way you don't
cool.
run into random, because random acts of life too. Like wake up and do random stuff. It might lead to your desired end state, whatever your goals are, but it might not, right? So there's a difference between like just working out and training. Like training because it's planned and intentional, you know it's going to lead to your desired end state. Whereas just working out, it may,
Right.
but you don't know.
Right. So that was purpose, plan, periodization, and progression.
Yeah.
Cool.
I appreciate you turning me on to them. I hadn't heard of them before we started doing this. And like I started off with the CrossFit stuff. And that was my biggest issue when CrossFit was very young. It's come a long way since then, but it was all, in my opinion, random acts of training.
Yeah. Very hard random acts of training.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still
Can we
valuable,
smoke you?
But like
Yeah.
I just didn't get a lot out of it. And so I went into CrossFit Endurance, which I got a lot of value out of. And then right before I deployed, I got turned on to military athlete. And so it was cool to find out that Atomic Athlete came from military athlete. And that the biggest change they made is essentially avoiding a lot of the overuse injuries.
Yeah.
Because that's what I struggled with. I used military athletes program for the selection. And I ended up with tendonitis. I had a pulled hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
And the programming does work. It because I mean Jake and them obviously had a lot to do with that, but it's just very aggressive.
It is, yeah. And it's good. It's intentional as well. But what I like about Atomic Athlete, and I've been peppering that into my stuff ever since we started this, but it is much more sustainable, and I don't have nearly the injuries I used to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's key, right? That's some of the best advice I ever got before I went to a selection program was don't overtrain, right? You want to be, when you get there, you want to be healthy.
Yeah.
What they didn't tell me was when I get there, I also wanted to be fatter than I was because I was way too lean. That was part of my problem. But anyway, cool. Well, gentlemen, thanks for everything and your insights to wellness and fitness. Looking forward to seeing where we are in a couple of months and Chuck's 50 kilometer. And so you're doing all of the services fitness tests. Does that include the Space Force? I'm curious to know what they're.
Yeah, I mean,
Do they have one?
I don't know. It's got to be even less than the Air Force.
Yeah, the Air Force one is kind of strange.
Yeah.
It's like 1.5 mile run. It's like, okay.
Because that's how far it is from the cockpit to the officers club.
Yeah, I know there's probably Air Force people listening, but I remember I'd be so upset. I'd run to the track all the time down in Tampa when I was going to a course down there. And they would take their PT test, the Air Force, and when they would get to the end into their 1.5 miles, they would just fall down and lay down on the ground. So I would step on them on purpose and kick them. I'm like this is dumb. I don't know if this is a cultural thing or maybe this is a unit thing, but that was ridiculous. And they were so mad, and I would get yelled at. Like I was like, well, don't. If I'm running full speed and you lay down in front of me, that is your fault. Right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, so we're going to do that. But in ending this, if you want to check out Atomic Athlete, their logo is on the front of our web page.
Yeah, links right there.
objectivearete.com. Just scroll down there, click on that. We've also got TB Physios on there, who is one of the physical therapists who helped put me back together. Teddy Ballard, he's written some articles for us. Check him out because, man, he's got some great videos on his Instagram. He posts all the time just about things that can help the everyday person get through whatever.
Yeah.
Make sure when you're training, TV Physio, check him out.
Yeah, he helped me out with my hip surgery.
Yeah, so yeah,
He's a great guy too, man. Yeah,
check him out. And eventually we're gonna have some book lists on our website, right? This whole thing's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So if you would like to see something, like hit us up, man. Our contact info on there, like, hey, can you do an episode on this? Can you maybe provide this information, right? Because as we build, everything that we're doing out, which we're not going to really launch a ton more until midsummer, but we can release some stuff before that too if it's going to help somebody. Like,
Yeah.
Hey, here's a good book list of if you're gonna read nothing else, read these things and take this from it.
Yeah. And I just want to point out too, for the people that are watching, note that the two former officers are not wearing a safety reflective band like the Sergeant Major is.
Yeah.
That's good, man.
Because you can also go to www.chuckritter.com and you can get these, right? For real. Like
with a shopping cart?
The shopping cart, right? Handmade by a Sergeant Major, right?
Cool.
What people will probably never see those. I built the office upstairs where I could sit there and do a lot of work on all that stuff. But I purposely, instead of a carpet, it's fake grass because I'm sitting there. I'm like, this motherfucker's on the grass. I'm just mad at myself, right? And that way I turn that anger just into
positive energy.
Into energy.
Yeah.
So I get to channel like the fact that I'm just on this grass and not caring.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Well,
good.
we'll make that an episode for a future date. the things that piss off sergeant majors.
Yeah. I used to carry like a small roll of it, and I'd go into the bathroom and just roll it out in front of the urinal and stand there, wait for somebody. Like, what are you doing? Now we do this.
All right. Well, great spending time with you guys, and we'll do this again soon.
Yeah,
Cheers.